So you were talking about ditching the documentarian aspect of things and getting rid of that character. So then how do you explain that, keeping that approach then in the series?
We have deftly failed to explain it. I don't know. I mean, I think, look, it's an approach that's been around a long time, and Christopher Guest does it in movies. Albert Brooks used to do it in movies. You know, in Ferris Bueller stops and talks directly to the camera. I mean, it's not a sort of a visual vocabulary that is jarring to audiences because they've seen it before. So we sort of thought, well, maybe the audience will provide its own explanation. Someone, I guess, is making a documentary about these people, you know, and we sort of like it and we don't ask a lot of questions. We were hoping that's what America would say. And I think for the most part they have. I mean, they sort of like this glimpse into what people are thinking when they talk directly to the camera, and they like this sort of stolen camera angle thing, and that's sort of where it ends for them. I mean, I'm sure some people go like, well, who exactly is filming this? But, you know, hopefully they provide their own answers.
Can you explain how the characters interact with the camera, and do you script what they say into the camera? Is that in the
Well, we
script?
script everything, and then we give the actors some license to kind of roll with it, do what they want, improvise. We always shoot the scripted version several times and then give them their free rein. As far as their looks to the camera, some of those are scripted. You know, so-and-so steals a glance at the camera. A lot of them are things that on a certain take, you know, the fourth or fifth take of a scene, we might say, you know what, just really, really subtly kind of look in the direction of the camera after you say that. So we have choices, and then we decide in editing what we want to go with. But we don't want to overdo that because it sort of violates the form a little bit. If they're too often winking at the audience, you really lose the experience of having people interact in a home, in a life, and we just get to look at it. If they're constantly letting us know they know we're here, it kind of vitiates that a little bit. So we try to be quite sparing with it.
Let's talk about the casting for Modern Family, and how did you have particular actors in mind for roles at all?
Well, we did. We, you know, the patriarch was a key character, and we had met with Ed O'Neill prior to this on another notion that we had. Steve and I had written about 2/3 of a pilot that featured sort of this crusty older guy, and so we met with him, and he was great. He's an easygoing guy, a brilliant storyteller. It just seemed like somebody that it would be fun to be with for long days together on a set. So when we wrote Modern Family, you know, we originally thought about Craig T. Nelson, who's another actor that we both admired, and had kind of sat down with him and a little bit had him in mind. But as we got into writing it, we kept thinking about Ed O'Neill again. Like, should we make this guy a little bit more kind of, you know, everyman, not quite as refined maybe as what Craig T. Nelson can bring. Not refined, but there's just a very sort of down-to-earth quality that Ed brings. And the more we thought about him and sort of incorporated that into the part as we were writing it, we thought, this is really the guy for us. And so we approached him, and he read the script. And it wasn't, I don't think, in a hurry to come back to television, but when he read it, said, yeah, I want to do this. For the character Phil, I mean, I'd worked with Ty Burrell twice before. Steve had once before. Think of him as a great, largely unknown, untapped resource. He's a brilliant comedic actor, and you know, while there could be some who said like, well, you failed with him twice, maybe you guys aren't the perfect teammates. It seemed irresistible because he really this part I think is even closer to who Ty is and what Ty does well than the two previous had been. So we wanted him, and fortunately the network let us have him. Sofia Vergara is someone that ABC had a long relationship with, and we, in fact, when we pitched the idea to the network, knew we wanted Ed O'Neill as this sort of divorcee on his second marriage to a younger ethnic wife. We weren't sure specifically what that was going to be yet, and they said, well, we've had great luck with Sofia Vergara. She's on a holding deal. What about her? We met with her, watched a couple things, said that's great. She's got obviously beautiful, but has a great energy and vivacity, and thought, okay, she's perfect. So we had 3 of the parts cast before we started casting, more or less, and then it was a matter of finding a good Claire to go with Phil. And Julie Bowen came in, who was 8 months pregnant with twins, not really looking to do a series, but liked the script. ABC said, well, we like Julie, but I don't know if you guys have noticed, she's got like 50 pounds of people, in her lap. Are we really going to be able to do this with her? Ah, don't worry. Well, if we really fall in love with her and we see her opposite Ty and they look good together, we'll make it work. So we cast her. We shot the whole pilot with her carrying, baskets of laundry in front of herself or stacked towels or things. She's literally, 8 months pregnant with twins. And then the gay couple, it was just a matter of auditioning people and then hoping that the 2 we liked best were good side by side, and they were. I mean, Jesse Tyler Ferguson had done a couple of series, and we knew his work and liked him. He was actually the first of the ones that we officially cast in the show, and then he had the long waiting period to find out who his battery mate was going to be. And Eric Stonestreet was really kind of a unknown. I think we used him in a very small part in Frasier or Out of Practice. Anyway, very funny. And you always say, like, well, new faces are good in a series. People like to have discoveries, and maybe this guy could be that. And then we sort of sat them side by side, and they were great together. So, because that's always the sort of the X factor. I mean, you can cast great actors, but when they're in couples, sometimes they just don't look like they're going to be good together, even though they're wonderful actors in their own right. So you have to just sort of hope the chemistry is there. But in the case of both, all 3 couples, Ed with Sophia and Ty with Julie and Eric and Jesse, they all just looked like real couples and had a great kind of energy between them.
How about the kids? What were you looking for when you were casting the kids?
Kids who didn't seem like kid actors. There's something sort of noxious about kids that are, can smile and cry on cue and have been coached to within an inch of their life by their parents, and it just doesn't seem remotely real. So, Rico Rodriguez, who plays Manny, he's from Texas. He's done a couple of commercials. His sister got into acting, and he sort of said, well, that seems fun. Maybe I'll try that. And he came in, and audition was a little rough around the edges, but seemed like a real kid. Nolan Gould, who plays Luke, is like, even though he plays a kid that's getting his head caught in banisters and is sort of like a step behind intellectually, he's a genius. He's a Mensa member, and even though he was in 5th grade, age-wise, during the first season, he was actually studying at 8th grade level, which is a way, again, that makes him seem sort of realer than most Hollywood kids. And same with the 2 girls, with Ariel and Sarah Hyland. They had experience, but they just brought sort of a real quality.
The character of Manny has really just captured everyone's hearts. Have you changed the way you saw that character or are writing to him more?
No, I read a book called The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, written by a guy named Junot Diaz, who's mostly a short story writer for The New Yorker. And it's about this sort of heavy-set Dominican guy who is a hopeless romantic, keeps falling in love with women that he could never possibly have a shot at. And he's just destined to be unhappy. It's a bit of a dark book, but I sort of liked that character idea. So that was a little bit the inspiration for this character. You always tailor it once you see the actor, how he is in the role. And fortunately, there's nothing really dark about Manny, because Rico, who plays the part, is so winning and spirited. But we like the idea of this sort of longing romantic soul in this little boy, and that was always the idea from the beginning, that we didn't want him to be overly cute. We wanted him to be sort of yearning and soulful, but still a little boy.
Did you know after you finished the pilot that you had something that was going to be such a hit so quickly?
No. In fact, when we wrote the pilot, I didn't think it stood a chance, because I said, I don't know how America's going to make sense of this documentary approach, and I like kind of what we've done here structurally, but this seems like a bit of a hybrid, and I don't know what all this is. That's when we cast it, it started to become clearer to me, because I thought, wow, these are all really good actors, and they make the characters suddenly seem interesting to me. And then when we filmed it, and Jason Weiner, who directed, did a great job, and you really got that layer of sort of visual differentness. I thought, well, this is really good. It's certainly a really good pilot. I'm not sure yet it's a series, because I don't know how hard it's going to be to come up with stories. But once we got into pre-production and the stories were coming fairly easily, I thought, I don't know, maybe we got a shot with this, because, I mean, that's always the key. If you feel like there's stuff to explore there, then probably the audience will feel the same way.
So how much pressure do you feel to just keep elevating the quality? Because you right out of the gate were such a success with critics, with viewers.
I hope we don't feel constant pressure to elevate the quality, maybe to maintain the quality. Quality is a bit of a subjective term. We hope to not repeat ourselves. We hope to find new things to explore in the characters. I mean, it's family. There's dynamics and stuff that we all feel in family. So hopefully that's, there's more to explore, for example, I feel, in complicated family relationships than there are in workplace relationships, because people can relate to a troubled relationship between a father and son, a competitive relationship between a brother and sister, a kind of unresolved relationship between a slightly tomboyish woman and her kind of, introverted father. Add to that, a mother who's dealing with a stepmother who's gorgeous and 3 years younger than she is. Add to that, that's just talking about the adult relationships. Then we've got, relationships between the couples, odd husband-wife relationships, odd sort of spousal relationship in the gay couple. Then we've got all the kid stuff. So there's lots of stuff to explore that I think is relatable to people.
How do you and Steve divide up your responsibilities on the show? How do you work together?
Well, we do it a lot of ways. I mean, we each write scripts individually. We each frequently take half the staff. We have 10 writers this year. He'll take 4, I'll take 4, and we'll break stories, simultaneously. But then each of us sort of gets to weigh in on the other story and maybe spend a day with each other's group to make sure that all the stories we tell are sort of acceptable to both of us, because we don't want to ever be doing an episode in a given week where I or he is saying, like, I just don't get this story, I don't like it. You want to sort of keep the quality control that way to each of our satisfactions. The actual production, we alternate, because you're on stage for a week. It takes a week to shoot each episode, and he did the even ones and I did the odd ones last year, and so that leaves us in different places a lot of the time. But I think that actually makes things more efficient, because there's a lot to be done to achieve 24 episodes in a season.
How do you think you complement each other in your work relationship?
He doesn't compliment me nearly often enough. He's a bit more impulsive, a little bit more think outside of the box. Wow, what if we did a scene where they all jump in the pool together? What if it? And that's a good thing to have. Someone who's just pitching crazy things, like, I'm not even sure how we ever going to get there, but wouldn't it be great if this happened? My approach is much more deliberate than that. Like, well, how do you think we're going to get to that scene? All right, well, let's sit here and like really dig in and spend a few hours and see if we can get there. And they're different approaches, but they do sort of sync up pretty well. I'm more deliberate and sort of dog with a bone, and he's a little bit more helter-skelter, but both are important to the process.
What have been your favorite episodes so far?
I loved the Valentine's episode where Phil and Claire sort of do a little role-playing thing and meet up in a bar as Clive and Julianne. I love the Fizbo episode, which is based upon a clowning character that Eric actually used and was during college. He actually was a clown. I certainly love the pilot. So many of these stories are based upon things that happened to our writers. I mean, one of our writers had a kidney stone, and they had to call the paramedics, and his wife disappears, and she comes back in a sexier outfit because she wanted to look good in front of the sexy fireman who showed up, and he was furious with her, in between his screaming over his kidney stone. We would use that in an episode, which was kind of a favorite. We've only done one season, so I hope that I liked all of them in different ways. But, I like the ones that can kind of bounce between, crazy sort of high comedy, Phil wearing a fake mustache, getting trapped in a porta potty, on their front lawn, but then come around to a sweet ending. In that case, it was Claire has really wanted to impress this girlfriend who she used to work alongside of. This woman has stayed on a career path where Claire took sort of the domestic path, and she just wants her choice to look really right in this other woman's eyes. She comes home, Phil is in the porta potty, the kids are naked running through the house, there's rats. I mean, it's the worst possible picture of what could have gone on, in their house that day. And she freaks out on the family and goes, and they didn't really deserve it. She just has to let go of this. But the family just sort of re-embraces her at the end. She knows she's got to apologize to them, and they say they don't even have to say. They just let it be known they're giving her a pass on this one. So we have this insanity and big high comedy in the early half, and then this very small sort of sweet moment at the end. And episodes that sort of can accomplish that range, I would say, are my favorites.
Okay. You talked about a lot of these stories coming from things that happened to your writers. What are the stories that we've seen that have come from you and your experiences with your family?
Not uncommonly, I will come home and there will be a party, an event, a throng in my house. There was a wedding in this room, and I knew about it, but I think I only knew about it for 2 days, and there was a wedding taking place in my house. Well, we did that episode. That's very much an aspect of Cameron's character, that he can't say no to anyone's sad story. That's my wife. My sons have a lot of Manny in them. My son my 11-year-old asked for a smoking jacket as a Christmas present this year, so that became a thing that Manny had to do. There's little bits of things here and there throughout episodes, but again, it's a group effort. Everybody brings in their most embarrassing family stories, and we find a way to weave the best of them into the fabric of the show.
Have you gotten releases from all these people that you're allowed to use their lives?
No,
how do they feel
need
about
to
it?
know. They need to know better than to tell comedy writers embarrassing stories from their lives. They need to know they're going to wind up there somewhere, somehow.
How about the Hawaii episode and the airport? How did you decide that you wanted to go on location in the first season, which is typically not something that we see?
We decided we didn't want to go on location. We wanted to do a family vacation story without going on vacation. So we thought, well, that's a challenge. We'll do the family goes away story and never see them go away. It'll all be about getting to the airport, forgetting a driver's license, things happening in the airport, one person afraid to fly, this and that, and then it'll end with them getting on the plane. But having done that, A, we were stuck for a story and we were running out of time, and B, we thought, well, we are visual on the show, and it is natural to go on vacations. And just because we might be kind of risking having people say, like, well, what are you doing like a Brady Bunch type family goes to Hawaii episode in your first season? I think we said, well, yeah, but that happens in families. They take vacations together, so it's natural that we might do that on this series. And as long as we don't get too gimmicky with it, it's a viable thing to do. So then we wrote the second half, and it turned out pretty well. And we always had that idea that we might want to see Phil and Claire's, wedding that was denied them early on. And in a perfect world, I think maybe we would have waited to see that a little bit farther down the line. But we thought, well, we've just said they're on their way to Hawaii. It would be weird to wait and do that in season 2 or season 3. If we're going to do it, we might as well do it now. So we did.
And ABC was on board with that.
A network will never not want to do a show where a family goes to Hawaii or goes anywhere. It's promotable. Like, you know, audiences love to see characters in new, exciting, exotic locations. So they were very much in favor of it.
How about the list of guest stars that came on in the first season? Ed Norton, Minnie Driver. How did those guest stars come about?
Well, you know, there's always a when it rains it pours sort of thing. You know, the show was successful, had a little bit of a cachet to it. Suddenly actors, you know, start saying, oh, that seems like a fun show to be on, and the phone was really ringing a lot. In the case of some of those people, they were friends of our cast members. I mean, Ed Norton is an old friend of Ty Burrell, so he called him and said, hey, I've been watching the show, I love it, I'd love to do something, and then we had to find something for him. Elizabeth Banks is a friend of Jesse's, so she said, I'd love to come on, maybe I'll be your, like, wildcat, you know, girlfriend of the gay couple, and so we wrote something for her. The others were just cast, you know, I guess we heard from Minnie Driver she'd like to do it, or, you know, Shelley Long, and quite a few other people who were interested in coming on the show, but we kind of made a decision about halfway through that we were we were running the risk of having too many sort of splashy guest actors on. We felt that the audience would start to stop believing in these families if every week some other recognizable Hollywood person was popping into their lives, so we really wanted to limit it.
How about the shooting of the series? What's your production schedule like?
Each episode is 5 days, sometimes 4. Maybe we start at 7:30 or 8 a.m. Usually done shooting by 4, which is quick. You know, often you will see shows that do 10, 12, 14-hour days. We're usually a 8, 9-hour day. A lot of that owes to the fact that we tend to shoot scenes from one angle, from one side. The documentary approach leads to efficiency. There's a less is more feeling that, you know, it looks realer if you're not covering, if you're not doing wide masters and going in for singles for everybody or 2 shots and lots of setups. This looks more like what a documentary crew would actually be able to achieve, and you shoot less because of it.
Do you prefer this then to the 3-camera?
I like them both. I love having an audience there. I like the shape of a week on a multi-camera show because, you know, first day it's a new script, you're all hearing it for the first time, and it gets better and better and better, and you keep waiting for that audience to come in on day 5, and then they come in, there's excitement, you're getting your immediate reaction from the audience. With this thing, you never really know how the audience is responding because we're just making it on our little soundstage with each other, and you never get that reaction. But I love the ability to do multiple takes and really play with it and refine it and work a lot with the actors without the sort of the pressure of having to get it right immediately because you got 300 people sitting there watching it happen.
What's the most enjoyable part of doing this show for you?
I'd have to say working with the actors. I mean, I love writers. You know, I grew up in a family of writers. I am a writer. I love, you know, sitting around with funny, smart people and making each other laugh, which is the life of the writer's room. But it's a new dimension when you're working with funny, smart people who are also performers and extroverts, which writers tend not to be because there's a whole new creative energy in that. So if I can sort of be standing off in the shadows and suggesting things, and in a moment later something wonderful happens in the filming, that's thrilling.
So can you tell us any scoop for season 2?
We see Cameron's mom come. That's interesting. She's very touchy. She's sort of touchy, a little too touchy with Mitchell. Likes to touch him. What's that about? That's a Cameron question on both Cameron and Mitchell's mind. There's an earthquake that happens, big earthquake, and it has different repercussions in all 3 homes. You know, there's a flash mob. You know what those are? Flash mob scene that happens that one of our characters is involved with. Lots of things. Nothing. No giant like shake up in in anybody's life. But I think actually I would say we figured out the first 12 for season 2, and I feel more confident in these 12 than I did in the first 12 for season 1.
Okay. So moving on to just some more general things, what do you think of the state of network television today?
Well, I think the quality is good, as good as it's ever been, but the audiences are diminishing, and that's scary to some people. There might be a little bit of pressure from the networks more than ever to appeal to the least common denominator, go right down the middle, because we need to, make this as broadly popular as possible, which isn't always the best idea, but you understand it from a business standpoint why they do that. Look, I mean, there were people who said 5 years ago that network television was dying, and I was ready to almost believe that, so I'm thrilled that, we're still doing it, and we can put something on television that's getting a lot of viewers, So I think the people who predicted the early demise of network television were proved wrong. It could still happen. 5 years from now, we could be looking at, a broader landscape of, cable, internet, some network, but mostly everybody with a smaller audience. But, overall, it hasn't changed that much.
What's your reaction to critics and people saying that, the sitcom was the family sitcom was kind of dead, and then Modern Family came along and revitalized it?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it was, things go in cycles almost of their own volition. People, got tired of sitcoms because they all seem the same. They rush over to drama or something else, and then they get tired of drama and they rush back to sitcoms. If it happened that we were a hit show that came along this year and we're getting credit for something that would have happened anyway, fine. I mean, I don't think we're doing anything that's that different. We're doing something that's 5 or 10% different from what's been done before, where some people think like, oh, you got to do something that's 75% different. I think you just move it a little bit to one side and you get more credit than you deserve. But no, I don't think puts too much pressure on us to say we're saving the sitcom. I think we came along at the right time.
You mentioned that you like working with actors. What's your approach to working with actors?
Well, I think people say like, wow, you find a way to be so encouraging, and it's like, well, I don't do that in any kind of because I'm supposed to or manipulative way. I admire the risks they take, putting themselves out there, and so I think when I talk to actors, what I say is imbued with that and admiration for what they do, and I try to be encouraging and maybe just give little suggestions for how to make things better. Or I guess it's creating an environment where they feel free to experiment and try things without feeling like they're going to be judged or criticized for it if it doesn't work out. That's the main thing.
What's your relationship been like with the FCC over the years through your career on different shows?
I can't think of too many specific incidents. I mean, you get weird notes, why you can't say "God damn" on television, but you could say "balls," and like it's arbitrary, really. I mean, but I've been lucky enough to be on hit shows where the rules are a little bit more relaxed, so there haven't been too many real battles. Battles are more with the network, I think, than the standards and practice people.
How has the rise of the internet affected you and your career and what you're doing?
Well, it's competition for eyeballs, which means it's a threat to the industry a little bit. But the other factor is you get immediate feedback on what you do, and people who are creative tend to be insecure, no matter how successful they are. Writers, actors, directors, and to make a show, shoot it, today, 2 weeks later it's on television, 2 minutes after it's on television, there are already 1,000 opinions about it on the internet. It's very hard to not avail yourself of that. And it's also very hard not to come away from reading the stuff that appears on the internet with mixed feelings. Some people like it, some don't, and you're going to be vulnerable in reading it. But that's a very different experience from 5 years ago, when that didn't happen, let alone 25 years ago when I started out.
What would you say in your career has been your proudest achievement?
I don't know that there is a single proudest achievement. We won. Look, we shouldn't care about awards, but I was very proud that we won 5 consecutive Emmys on Frasier. I'm proud to still be working in comedy, for as long as I have, I have now co-created a show that, for the moment, is working, and that's a new experience for me too. So I think it's being able to sort of still chart new territory and get excitement from that. I'm proud of that.
What would you say is your biggest regret?
I don't know that I have one. Sorry to disappoint you.
No, that's a good answer. Who was your biggest mentor throughout your career?
Well, look, I grew up with a father who was a writer, a very good writer, a revered writer, and he was someone who influenced me in what he wrote and in what he said. So certainly he was the biggest influence. But there are many writers that I have worked with and admired and been jealous of and wanted the respect of, and that's a good thing. That sort of, churning competitiveness drives you, and there have been many people who have done that for me.
We've talked a lot about your dad, David Lloyd, and he passed away in 2009. What would you say is his legacy in television?
He was a great writer of scripts. I mean, he contributed a ton in rewrites. For 30 years, he was a hired hand to come in and take scripts and make them better in a short period of time, along with other people. He was very fast on his feet, pitching new jokes, pitching story fixes, always sort of dazzled people in rewrite rooms with his ability to do that. Probably even more than that was his facility just as a straight script writer, someone who was good at it, fast at doing it, and enjoyed doing it. So in the course of his career, he wrote maybe 150 scripts. I mean, that's really unheard of in contemporary times. There were seasons where he would write 17 scripts in a given year. I mean, you don't find nowadays people who write more than 5 in a year. So I think he would like to be remembered as a very gifted and prolific writer, and he was.
What was the best advice he ever gave you about your writing career?
I don't know. Never sign more than a 2-year contract. I don't know. I'm not sure there was any specific advice. It was sort of more stuff that you just glean over the years. But there wasn't advice per se like that. Here's what you need to do. Here's who you need to hang out with. It was more just sort of stuff you learn by osmosis, hearing him talk about how scripts got better or what constituted good writing. I guess he said, I've never trusted the people who watch television and think that will make them better television writers. Read books.
What advice would you give to aspiring writers?
Live a life and draw on those experiences. Don't think that, you're going to make it as a Hollywood writer by writing scripts when you're 16 and trying to get a job in someone's office when you're 20, because at some point you're going to wake up and realize you forgot to do anything with your life and you don't really have any raw material to write from. Better to go be a doctor or a lawyer or a submarine captain or something completely different until you're 30, and then come back and become a writer because you have a lot more life experience.
How would you like to be remembered?
I guess as someone who cared about it, who worked hard and didn't compromise, and believed that there was a real craft to television writing, and it was worth getting right because people appreciate a well-made product. And if people are still watching anything that I wrote 20 years after I wrote it, that will be a compliment.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you.